Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about something that took me by surprise, the amount of students who vote for the student union elections. They're very democratic, these elections, by the way. Now, on any college campus, or in fact, just about every college I can think of, I'm aware of, they have a student union. Now, you've probably noticed how incredibly activist the student unions tend to be. They buy into all sorts of issues that are very dear to the globalists, and the student unions are almost indistinguishable from the NGO activists that circle around all these universities. Many NGOs have their own employees directly, with an office inside the university on the university campus for the sole purpose of getting rent-a-mob placard waving students out on the street at any given moment. And this is done in very close concert with the university lecturers and university administration. So the NGO organizer can say, well, we need people to come out for a climate change march. And the university administration and the lecturing staff will give their students time off in a very closely coordinated and integrated, if you like, system, give their students time off and give them credits and various allowances and or dispensations towards their final grades if they go and attend these marches. And so you can just see sort of instantly how integrated these the NGO, the activist, frontline activist NGOs, the street march organisers and the student unions are. They're almost indistinguishable, and again, with very much supported by the university administration. But one thing did surprise me was how few students vote in these elections. Now, the vote tends to drop off the more exacting the university entrance standards are. So say where there are still some universities, believe it or not, actually do have entrance standards that you have to have a certain grade of mark. The amount of students that vote in the student election is typically between 5 and 10%. In fact, rarely even gets to 10%. And a university where, say, it's got a very heavy emphasis on STEM and other science type subjects, again where there's no affirmative action type grading, then again the student activism or the proportion of those students engaging in activism and thus voting for the student union is quite small. Now that changes when you get situations where the university has a heavy emphasis on arts type subjects, such as sociology or lesbian dance theory or I don't know, African American music studies or something like that. Then you tend to get a much higher proportion of students that are involved or vote for the union. But even then, it rarely exceeds 50%. So it did surprise me that I just assumed there'd be at least a third would vote in the student union. But I was surprised to see that again that in the more prestigious or universities where standards still matter, the actual amount of voting is quite low. Now, it means, though, that the activists, so the whole student union body maybe represents, let's be generous and say it represents 10% of the students. Most of the students doing the STEM subjects don't bother voting. They're not interested. They're there at university in education, not to be there to be political activists. But this tends to vacate the entire union field to a small number of activists that are NGO organised and NGO funded, and effectively are getting, activist training, if you like, from the NGOs, and then supplied with all sorts of things like the bullhorns and this is how you go about stirring up trouble. These are the lines that you use to condemn your fellow students for being Nazis, and so on and so forth. So they get there's quite a large international NGO or organisation, very well funded, by the likes of George Soros, the United Nations or whatever, that helps this along. But what it means, though, is the entire student union and all the fees they collect, because in a lot of universities it's compulsory that you pay fees. This small group of activist students, again, NGO trained and activated and controlled and directed, they're able to, even though their numbers are small, they're able, because they all vote for each other, so they're able to ensure that not a single moderate voice gets onto the union, and that only the most strident activists are there that are screaming, Nazis are everywhere from every rooftop and so on, that they're able to have complete control of the union and the union budget. So even the what you might call moderates are still angry, bitter activists wanting to put all sorts of propaganda. But these people also control resources vastly out of proportion, not only to their numbers, because they can call on this army of NGO activists and this NGO infrastructure to come to their assistance. So if the university decides to invite a speaker who they disagree with in the name of democracy and free speech and all that sort of thing, that person has to be shut down and condemned. And so there'll be all sorts of flyers and literature and activists running around screaming Nazi everywhere and that sort of thing. And so again, these people are firstly, they're very well protected. If they want time off from a class to go and run around shouting Nazi everywhere, then they're able to do it, and they won't suffer because of it. I mean, if they would suffer a loss of grades because of it, then they probably wouldn't, or they'd be much less inclined to. So it's only because that entire college, university infrastructure at all levels, administrative, educational, and again, merging with external NGOs, only because they all support that. But it illustrates to me that there's actually a very small cadre, a very small number of activist students, put forward by the NGO machine, that managed to take over these unions. And if the vote is only 10% of students vote, voting's not compulsory. So, but if only 10% of students vote, these small number of people still get 100% of the power. Now they insist that that's democracy, because only the people they approve of vote, and therefore that's what democracy means to them. If we approve of the voter, then it's democratic. But if we don't approve of the voter, it's not democratic. And if we don't approve of the people that are standing for office, that also is not democratic. But if you're fighting Nazis and so on, then that's democratic. Fuck. I mean, the chutzpah of these people, seriously. But that's an interesting sort of thing, and I thought I'd do just a short video on it. That in reality, a very small number of people are voting for these student unions, and again, it's a very organised activist thing to ensure that in nearly all instances, only the most strident pro-globalist activists, pro-climate change, are getting into these student unions, which then gives them a very loud and noisy platform to be able to talk from while they spend other people's money. You've been a Taskless today. You're a Pushback Channel. Thank you for listening.